Welcome to the Fish Nerd, show about fish, fishing, and eating fish. I'm Clay Groves, Chief Executive Fish Nerd, Licensed Fishing Guide, your best friend. It's day 30 of National Podcast Posting Month, and I am hating NaPodPoMo. I'm hating the people who created this stupid thing. I'm just kidding. I'm actually having a good time with it, but it's really difficult to find the time, and we did it. We did 30 days, 30 episodes. We had a lot of help from a lot of other great podcasters, listener support, everything you can imagine. We've actually have too much content that's possible. We have people still sending in their news stories. So here's what we're going to do. The month of December, January, and going forward, if you have a fishing news segment and you want to give it to us, take your cell phone, push record, and record us a fish in the news segment. Email it to clay@fishnerds.com, and I will use it on future shows. Listener content, other podcasters' content, whatever. It's all good as long as I'm not the one doing all the work. I'm super happy to have it. Now, so for our very last Fish the News, I was going to do a special musical extravaganza. We were going to have showgirls. We were going to have dancing. We were going to have a conga line. We were going to have a big giant feast, all that stuff. But then Thanksgiving happened, and I ate too much, and I don't feel very good, and I can't do it. So we're not doing it. Instead, we're going to bring you some Fish in the News from New Hampshire Trout Unlimited. So here is Fish in the News. Everybody loves their fish in the news. Okay, fish nerds. So, like I said, Trout Unlimited is here, and we have Randy Willett, who is he's the president of the world of trout. Actually, I'll let him tell you who he is. Randy, who are you?
Hey, Clay. My name is Randy Willett. I am president of Saco Valley Trout Unlimited, and I am vice president of New Hampshire Trout Unlimited.
Great. And this is pretty local. So if you live outside New Hampshire, listen anyway, because you're going to want to come visit New Hampshire after hearing about some of the cool stuff going on here. But we wanted to give Trout Unlimited a chance to talk about some of the cool stuff going on and what Trout Unlimited does, both locally and nationally, and whatever Randy wants to talk about, because he asked if he can come on, and I'm like, let's do this. Let's have some fun. So, Randy, what's your big thing happening right now?
Well, just a quick background, Clay. So Trout Unlimited was founded in 1959 out in Michigan on the Osaba River. Right now, we've got about 300,000 plus minus members and supporters. Our generalized mission statement is to conserve, protect, restore North America's cold water fisheries and their watersheds. From there, we bump it down to our state level, our state council, which I'm happy to be a part of at this point.
Wait, does every state have its own state council?
Yes, they do. So there's national leadership, which are more or less paid positions, right down to state level leadership positions, which are more or less, it's all volunteer work. That's what we do. It's a conservation organization, right down to the local chapter level.
Good. All right, keep going.
So in our neck of the woods in New Hampshire, we've got a lot of projects taking place. One of them I'd really like to spotlight today is work that we're doing with a couple other conservation groups here in the state of New Hampshire, as well as our very own New Hampshire Fish and Game Department, specific to a land acquisition we're doing on the Ammonoosuc River in Bethlehem, New Hampshire.
Right. And people who don't know where Bethlehem, New Hampshire is, that's the birthplace of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
Up in New Hampshire? Oh,
New Hampshire. You had a wicked good time being born up there. No, Bethlehem is a small town up in the White Mountains, New Hampshire. I think it's the highest level town, like above sea level on the eastern seaboard.
I think that's correct. Yeah. I think that's correct. So what we're trying to do is an opportunity presented itself through a private property owner, and they have a parcel of land that is on the Ammonoosuc River. It's approximately 260 acres. And they were generous enough to approach not only New Hampshire Fish and Game, Trout Unlimited, as well as the New Hampshire Forest Society about potentially putting this property into a conservation easement. Well, obviously, long story short, when all these different parties kind of heard about this, we jumped on top of this. So we've got a coordinated fundraising effort that's transpiring. Trying to fundraise, just not here in our local chapter, but at the state level, right up into, national level to a certain degree. We've got our national leadership involved with this as well. So long story short, thus far we've done really well at the chapter level, and next week on December 3rd at 6:30 at Flatbread Pizza, the Eastern Slope Inn, we're going to be presenting a check to Mr. Tom Howell, the New Hampshire Forest Society, for $2,000.
Which is pretty good. And that's in North Conway, New Hampshire, for those people outside the state.
Yes, that's correct. In hopes of fostering this project and getting the New Hampshire Forest Society where they need to be with funds for this project. And as I understand it, with all of the different partnering organizations, not just Trout Unlimited, but the New Hampshire Forest Society. Our very own Fish and Game Department has chipped in a sizable sum. They really do believe this is a good project. It looks like this is probably going to happen, knock on wood. I don't want to be too optimistic, but it looks like it's going to be a good deal for not just anglers, but for the general user. The idea is to preserve this in perpetuity, to make sure it has public land use. It's becoming a bigger issue. We talk a lot about that out west, but I mean we're seeing more issues here in the East Coast as well.
Yeah. So this property, there must be a river, the Ammonoosuc River running through it. And what's the fishery like at the Ammonoosuc River?
It's a brook trout fishery. I mean, I do believe there is some stocking that takes place there. There is also some potential for wild fisheries to be preserved in that neck of the woods. There's some feeder streams and whatnot to get in there that we're very much interested in trying to advocate having that piece of water protected. Not just from purchasing the property and leaving a loan standpoint, but also maybe having the conversation with regards to what regulations and policies look like in order to kind of leave that a more wild and natural place.
So when you say protected, I think be specific. Do you mean protecting wild fishes or keeping it from all fishing altogether out of it?
Protecting wild fish. We're not so much interested in, segmenting it off for one specific group of people. That's not really what we're interested. If anything else, we're interested in getting more and a more diverse group of people engaged with what our mission is.
Perfect. And so we've been a lot in the last 6 or 8 months in New Hampshire, talking about wild brook trout has been really popular topic. And one of the big controversial things is stocking fish. We're talking about it all the time. Where does Trout Unlimited's stance on stocking fishes? Where are you guys with this? I mean, what do you do?
So we have a mandate from the state level that indicates any place where there is the potential or a validated area that we know is a wild fishery, that you shouldn't stock fish there. We should do our best to preserve and protect what is there, and if anything else, make it better. To give you a classic case in point, we've got a local body of water in a couple towns north of us, which we're able to come to agreement with Fish and Game to stop stocking in order to kind of realize what the potential is on that fishery. And we're hoping down the road that we will be able to also put forth TU's opinions with regards to what practical catch and release limits will look like, and will it strictly be a wild fishery in perpetuity, or are they looking to maybe have a barrier, a natural barrier at one spot, and then maybe have something below that's at stock versus not stocked above it? Compromise.
Right. And you have to, I mean, we're thinking about the whole recreational fishing industry, is funding in New Hampshire comes from recreational anglers. And if you even give the impression to people that the fishing isn't going to be good, or people will stop going to that area to go fishing, they'll go someplace else. So there's some value there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, ideally, in a perfect world, we'd very much prefer to have everything wild, natural, and free. With that said, we're looking at 100 plus years or close to 100 plus years of conservation practices. Unfortunately, a lot of the information we had a long time ago is not necessarily where we're at today.
The funny thing about science is it's always changes. Yeah.
Always changes. And to our credit, I do believe there's a new generation of anglers, and not even just anglers, but conservationists, just general conservationists who want to be outside and enjoy wild places, that have a vested interest in getting back to that. At the same token, I think from a Trout Unlimited standpoint, our goal is to move forward and put together a plan that we can actually, see results, have actionable items that we can achieve, and bring those to fruition to show our partners that we are making progress in the right direction.
Right. We were talking before we pushed record today. We were talking about how trout management is old in New England. We've been doing it a long time, and we've been doing it, I think, wrong by a lot of people's argument for a long time. And now we're making some efforts to get it right. And out west, everyone's like, why can't they, manage trout like they do out west? Well, why can't they?
It's honestly, it's a different fishery. First and foremost, I'm not going to claim to be an expert with regards to everything, Western fisheries politics and scientific management. And there's just as much, if not more, out there than there is here on the East Coast. With that said, it is a different fishery. They have a different land dynamic. They've got a different use dynamic, and try to.
What you were saying was newer.
It is to an extent, yeah. I mean, we've got policies and procedures that have been literally, in some cases, tentative to regard, that have been placed almost since the existence of the country. So to try to just handily rewind all that and think there's not going to be a transition period it's pretty short-sighted. As an example, our Trout Unlimited chapter for the longest time was not a Trout Unlimited chapter. It was a rod and reel club. We still have rod and reel clubs in New England, and that is something that kind of went from generation to generation, and that's just what they did. So what I really try to advocate with a lot of our members, and we do have some of that, I like to say old guard, some of those folks that are involved with the current iteration of Saco Valley Trout Unlimited, that, this is what was done. That doesn't mean that's what we need to do going forward, and here's why. So we really try to be thoughtful and not bash them on top of the head with it.
Well, you don't move anybody by beating the shit out of them. So,
No.
Excuse me.
No. One thing I've found, and I've just entered into my leadership position with Trout Unlimited about 3 or 4 years ago. Otherwise, I was just kind of a member at large, if you will. Is you've got to be patient. If you think things are going to change overnight in conservation politics, you're mistaken. I mean, there's people that have been doing this for 25, 30, 40, 50 years. And, it's a slow, arduous grind. You've got to take your victories where you can get them. And when you don't get them, you say, hey, we're going to work on it and change our philosophies a little bit and try to get what our end game is to get there as efficiently with the least number of, political casualties as possible.
Right. And it's a funny thing when you think about fish and politics, right? Because most people who don't fish have no idea that all fisher people aren't the same and aren't thinking the same thing. But fisher people are as diverse as the fishes they're trying to catch. So we're always going to have these topics that some people are really upset about or don't care about or passionate one way or the other about. It's kind of interesting to see. And I always been asking everybody comes on, especially if they're talking native fishes and they're talking about trout. Skip all the trout. Tell me about some of your favorite native fishes that are not trout. Trout are off the table. What else do you like?
I'm going to go old school. I'm hard-pressed to beat a fall fish in New England. I mean, they're beautiful. They fight like a son of a gun, and you can pretty much catch them just about anywhere. Yeah. And they're a hard-fighting fish. They don't taste too bad either. I've had them once or twice in my life. I can't say as I make a habit out of it, but I've had them for sure.
Yeah, super good. I talk about them all the time, and I love it. It's one of my favorite fish to talk about because they're such an interesting animal. So that's a minnow. For those who don't know, New Hampshire's largest native minnow. We also have carp, which are minnow in New Hampshire. They are not a native fish. Nope. Now, how long do you think an introduced fish has to be in the state before you consider it a New Hampshire fish?
Oh, I can't say as I've given that a ton of thought.
There's a lot of discussion on this nationally because we've introduced fish in New Hampshire since the 1840s.
Yeah.
And so there's been fish here a long time that people are sure are natives and they aren't.
It depends. I would say from a personal standpoint, it depends on how hard of a line you want to draw. Uh-huh. If you want to go die hard old school, then if you want to talk cold water fisheries, you're talking brook trout, you're talking fall fish. No, there should not be brown trout here. No, there should not be rainbow trout here. With that said, I think, at least specifically brown trout, for example, they've been here for the better part of 100 years, and I think there is certain areas, if you head north of us in Conway, if you head up towards, Berlin Gorham area, there's fisheries up there that have self-reproducing populations of rainbow trout, and they've been there quite a long time. So the question then becomes, are we looking to totally eradicate something that's been successful, or are we trying to, we're just trying to go back to 100%, brook trout and fall fish.
So if I'm living in the state with probably the least diverse fish population in the country, I think New Hampshire's pretty thin on diversity of fishes. I'm going to advocate for you're not going to make fish go away, but maybe protect the good stuff you got. That's kind of where I'm at.
Fair enough. I think that's a fair statement. I would agree with that.
Good. We agree on something. Yeah. That's perfect. All right. Give me some websites. Give me some stuff you want people to know about.
Sure. So above and beyond the project we just spoke of, you can find more information on that project at www.sacovalleytu.org.
Links in the show notes.
Yep, you get it. We also have a couple other interesting projects we've been partnering with. Some of our local conservation organizations on. Example, Fish and Game, we do electroshock fishing with them and netting surveys, things of that nature. Another event that we just recently took over on a local level would be Valley Pride Day. We're going to be converting over as to the point person of that, and it's not just a local town event, but it's recognized at the state level. And the idea for us is, putting ourselves out there and saying, fishing's awesome, but it's also more about the fish. It's more about the community involvement. If we can't get everybody on the same page with regards to taking care of our valley and our habitat, then why are we just simply complaining about one specific species? There's more to it than that. So we've took on that initiative. Trying to think what else on a local level we're looking at. We know we're constantly in policy talks with Fish and Game, kind of letting them know where we think we should be headed. Obviously, there are state organizations. State organizations always don't want to heed the advice of their constituency, and that's okay too, because they've got people they have to deal with on a daily basis. But if anything else, we have people that show up. We've got advocates that show up to every single Fish and Game Commissioners meeting that kind of make our voices heard, and they know that we're there and we're kind of paying attention to what's happening. In addition to that, we're very, very excited to announce, if folks haven't seen it, we were able to come to terms with Fish and Game and help them subsidize the replacement of our wild brook trout management programming signs. So we do have a specific set number of bodies of water, ponds, and moving water that have been recognized as wild brook trout management, and we have helped Fish and Game get those signs back up where they need to be, just so people are aware that these are protected waters and we have these, and we should do our best to take care of them.
Perfect. And on a personal level, we're friends, been friends a long time, and you run your own fishing guide service. Tell us about that.
I do. So I'm very, very grateful. I'm a New Hampshire licensed guide, the Swift River Ghillie. I'm based right out here at Conway, New Hampshire.
My competition. We fight like crazy.
Yeah, you can tell we're very competitive.
Yeah.
My website is www.theswiftriverghillie.com. Ghillie is Ghillie. I specialize in fly fishing excursions, but I'm open to pretty much anything. Pretty flexible guy, and looking forward to getting people on the water and helping educate them with regards to what we have here in the state of New Hampshire.
Yeah, and I want to get you on the ice this year and teach you something cool. And I'm really imagining fly fishing through the ice.
That would
so be cool. Using fly reels on small fly rods with ice fishing flies. That'd be how fun.
Yeah, I think that would be definitely something no one's done really to any degree yet. So that would be cool to kind of pioneer that.
Yeah, pretend we're special.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Randy.
You got it.
News, fish in the news. Everybody loves their fish in the news.
All right, that was Randy Willett from the Swift River. That was Randy Willett from the Swift River Ghillie, president of the New Hampshire Saco Valley chapter of Trout Unlimited, vice president. I don't know what the hell he's whispering in my ears. Who cares? You've got links are in the show notes. Thanks for being part of National Podcast Posting Month. We'll be back next week with our first full show for December, where we will unveil the winner of our unethical fishing contest. And that is over now, so you have missed out if you've not sent in your stuff. But we'll have a new contest in December. Thanks, everyone, for being part of NAPOD Pomo. By the way, all these shows are coming off the internet at the end of December and will only be available archived through our Patreon subscribers. And so if you subscribe now to just a regular podcast, you can download them to your phone. But December 31st, these are going away. So these 30 shows will be gone forever. So except for Patreon folks. Thank you so much. Fish Nerds out.